We interrupt this program for a special news bulletin.
Throws toward the corner of the end zone. It is intercepted! Intercepted! The Ducks have the ball!
To the end zone! Oregon! Mariota dives! Touchdown! They hand it off straight out! C.J. Verdell wins the game for Oregon!
Inside the 10! A hat-trick, a touchdown from Justin Herbert! Howard's going to run for it. Time runs out, and that'll do it! Welcome to the Big Ten, Oregon! They storm the field at Autzen!
Welcome, Duck fans, to another episode of the Ducks Rising Alumni Corner on the Ducks Rising Podcast Network. This podcast is sponsored by Backer, and we encourage all Duck fans to check out their amazing jackets, hats, hoodies, and more at Backer. That's BCKR.com. Use the code RISINGFREE for free expedited shipping and 10% of all orders back to Ducks Rising. Thrilled today on the Alumni Corner podcast to be welcomed by former Oregon wide receiver Drew DJ Davis. You may remember him as DJ, you remember him as Drew, but we're super excited to have you here today.
It's good to be on. Thank you for inviting me. Been a big fan and following what you're doing, so always willing to support.
Appreciate you, man. Well, let's hop right into it. I figure we just go a little chronological today. Talk to us about like your recruitment early on, growing up, and kind of how you got to Oregon and what your career was like early on there.
No problem. So I'm originally born and raised in Denver, Colorado. I played football and baseball since I was 8, and I knew probably at the age of 8 that I wanted to play in the NFL. I knew one of the hardest things for me in my mind wasn't to get from college to the NFL, but from high school to college to make sure people didn't pass you up. I played football and baseball young, played all those years. I absolutely loved baseball. It was my first love. But football was just something that it took a lot of hard work. It took a lot of effort. It took a lot of being out in the hot sun and weight room, lifting, squatting, doing all that kind of stuff. But when I got to high school, I really took to football, and I knew if I wanted to get to college with a scholarship, I had to focus on it a lot. And so I pretty much focused on football for my 4 years in high school, and I did baseball on and off my freshman and junior year. But once I got to junior year, that's when I recognized that I was really good, and I had 26 scholarship offers by the end of my junior year. And my high school coach and I, we talked about graduating early and going to college early and getting a jump start on everything. And so my process was very, very sped up. And so I pretty much had 26 offers into my junior year, and then I started to dwindle those down once I got into the season of my senior year. And the 4 schools that I zeroed that into was UCLA, Cal, Washington, and Oregon. And then my final 2 that it got down to was between UCLA and Oregon. And the funny thing was in my recruiting process, as I was going for trips to Washington and Oregon, the Washington coaches would try to argue with me and debate about how much it rained in Eugene, how much more it rained in Eugene than in Washington. And Oregon tried to debate on how much it rained in Washington outside of Eugene. And so that was pretty funny to go through that. But like I said, it came down to UCLA and Oregon. And the trip that I took to UCLA was the 2006 year where they beat USC. I think it was like 9-6 or 13-9 or something like that, some low-scoring affair. It was awesome. It was 75 degrees. You're in LA. They're filming a movie on campus. Just all this great stuff that can happen would happen. And my trip to Oregon, it was rainy. They got beat by Arizona that year. The running back ran for 200 and something yards. And one of the best things that I tell people about the trip is that I had a very good bowl of sourdough clam chowder that I thought was just heaven. And that's not just all I remember, but that's one of my favorite parts. But when it came down to looking at stats, Oregon's leading receiver was Jason Williams with, I think, 75 or 80 catches, almost 1,000 yards, I think close to 10 touchdowns. And UCLA's leading receiver was a running back with about 40-something catches. So when it comes down to football and it came down to, hey, do you want to go to college to, play football and catch some balls, or you just want to go and block and, watch your running back catch all the balls? And so that's how I kind of ended up at Oregon after looking at the stats and realizing, hey, if I go to Oregon, I got a chance to wear some pretty cool jerseys and also to catch some balls.
So obviously, speeding up that process a little bit, enrolling early, everything, what was that adjustment like coming into college? Did you have any welcome to college moments? What was that transition like for you coming from high school and being a younger kid and then jumping right into obviously a big time Pac-10 environment?
No bad welcome to college moments. That year was also the year we hired Coach Kelly as our offensive coordinator. So that was when they were installing this fast-paced offense and they were getting everybody used to it and what practice would be like. And so I did come and I was like, wow, this, college practices are a lot faster, but that's also because we were implementing his system. Probably the hardest thing, and what I talk to when I go back and I talk to high school student athletes, and I just tell them, now you're going to school or you're in school for, 6 to 8 hours and you practice and do your sport for 2 or 3. And in college, you pretty much focus on your sport, for 6, 8, 10 hours a day. And you go to class for about 3 or 4, study hall, do things in that realm. And so for me, it was just coming early. It was weird because I wasn't a part of the class that was there before me from the 2006 class. And then I also wasn't a part of the 2007 class that came in with me as well. But 2 other people that came in with me around that time, and this shows even more how skewed it is, was Will Tikawafu and also Mark Asper. And anybody that doesn't know those names, these are 2 Mormons who went on their mission trips. And so I'm coming in with them. I'm freshly 18 and they're about 21, 22 with girlfriends and maybe a wife at the time. But those are my people that I came in with. And so just the adjustment period was kind of just the thing of finding out what my classes were, how to juggle my schedule with football and getting to class and study hall, not having my car the first year. And then also just really trying to figure out, okay, am I good enough? I know I'm here, but am I good enough to play and start at this college football level?
Yeah, you mentioned the practice piece, obviously, and we had Will Murphy on recently, and we were talking to him about Chip's practices and stuff, and I remember the narrative back in the day, being pushed out at that time was kind of like, hey, these games feel slow because you should come see us practice. Just curious, like, your thoughts on that and any adjustment or any, like, stories you have that go along with that, because I feel like that was, Chip was obviously at the forefront of that kind of revolution when it came to tempo and offense and stuff, but it really does seem like that was something that wasn't just something you said, but something that was really true.
Yeah, shout out to my guy Will Murphy, little young Murph. Did an awesome job at Oregon. Was one of our great wide receivers who worked really hard. But he's 100% true about that. We practiced and we were so fast paced when we trained that when we got to the game, we're waiting for the referees to spot the ball. We're waiting for the chains to get set. We're doing all this other stuff, and it really made you realize, if you guys take this seriously and if you guys are able to do this in practice at a breakneck speed, when you get in the game, you're going to be in better shape to be able to do this in the long run. And as long as we got ahead on first down and made first downs and things like that, we had teams on their heels. And so for me, it was one of those things that it also helped me when I went to the NFL. Like, I would practice similarly to how I did at Oregon. I would always be jogging, from one drill to another, or after I would catch the ball, I would run 15, 20 yards or go score in the end zone and jog back, because there's a lot less people in the NFL as well. So it got people to see what my work ethic was. And, some people are like, man, you don't have to run that far when you catch a ball. And I'm like, I know, I'm good. I'm okay. I'm classically conditioned to do this. But it also just helped me make the team, and it just helped me keep those just hard-working principles in place that kind of set me apart from other people and other players.
So as someone that committed to, obviously, Coach Bellotti and then Coach Kelly taking over in 2009, like, what was that transition like for you, and were there some main differences from your perspective that, like, happened within the program going from one coach to another?
Yeah, there was. It was funny because, we go from practicing in the afternoon to the morning, which was really big. You heard moans and groans from everybody. They're like, oh, this ain't going to work. I'm not going to be practicing in the morning. They got to be crazy if they think I'm going to show up and practice at, we had to show up probably at the facility around like 5:36, depending on if we had to lift or not. But once we really got underway and we really started doing it, I loved the schedule. We had our hardest, or our last work day was, a Wednesday morning and noon, and we're done. And the Thursday's a walkthrough, and the Friday's a fast Friday, and we get to play the game on Saturday. But also it was just different because, instead of you going to class all day and then showing up to practice and after you've had a full day of who knows what, tests, class, lecture halls, 201, 202 classes, all that stuff. You pretty much just had to make sure you were going to sleep at night. You had to make sure you were hydrated. You can't go to practice, sluggish, and it shows up on film and your coaches know it. There's no going out and having late nights all the time. We had a few of those sometimes, dollar beers at Taylor's. I know my people know about it. But for the most part, it was an adjustment, but it was also when Chip took over, he also said, we're going to win on and off the field. We're going to go to class. We're going to raise our GPA. We're not going to miss study hall. There was a lot more accountability that wasn't there before. Some stuff that either got swept under the rug or people looked the other way, as far as missing tutor appointments or just not going to class or just, skating by with your classes. So that's the one thing I really respect Chip for, is that he was like, we're going to come here and we're going to be great football players, but we're also capable of doing a lot more. And he wasn't asking for us to go there, go to class and get 4.0s. He wasn't asking us to do 1,000 hours of community service. He was just asking us to do what the standard was, which honestly was set pretty low from before. And so once he took over, it was more so like, okay, we can do more. Let's be championship level on the field and off the field.
So with Chip coming in, obviously, in 2009, 2010, you started to make a real impact yourself on the field. I would say, just looking over your stats, those are kind of your two biggest seasons. Would you attribute that to just kind of growing into your body, the system? Like, what were those years like, really being able to kind of step into the limelight and show that you were, one of those dudes?
I think, athletes, we all have this idea that we want to go to college and, we get the scholarship and we want to go in and we want to start freshman year. And if we're talking football, we want to play 3 years and then go off to the NFL. And in actuality, for me, it was a little bit of a culture shock, because I get there, like I said, there's Jason Williams, there's Garen Strong, there's D Jones, there's Brian Paysinger, there's Cam Colvin. Like, we got all these guys who are really, really good. Jeff Mail, who switches over to wide receiver after his first year. And you look around and there's a lot of talent, and sometimes you got to just wait your time a little bit. And unfortunately for me, when I got my very first start against Stanford in 2008 was the same game that I tore my ACL after my very first start. And so all that hard work that I had been doing for that year and a half, I pretty much had to start over and, start from the bottom and work my way back up and get healthy. But for the most part, I think Chip's offense did help. But for me, it was more so just being out on the field. After I tore my ACL, I said, hey, I just want to be able to come back from this and be able to play these last 2 years in college before I ride off into the sunset and go out here and get a real big kid adult job leaving Oregon. But the offense helped, and Chip Kelly loves to run the ball. So a lot of people see us as this flashy offense that throws the ball around the field. Coach Kelly wanted to run the ball first. And in order to run the ball, you need to be able to block. And with me having a bigger body and being a bigger guy and DBs being super small and undersized and malnourished, I just took it upon myself to make sure I was a good blocker, that I gave my running backs lanes to run through, and I was able to block when we did some option stuff on the outside for the edge for LaMichael and Kenyon. But for the most part, I was just prepared. I was prepared. I knew what every position was. I knew what everybody would do. And I was just so well prepared going into my senior year that I was able to know defenses better as well. I was able to know where the blitz was coming from. I was able to know when we were going to throw the ball on the outside because we had them outnumbered. And that's what makes a great football player. So for me, it was just being more well-balanced all around, that when it got to that point, but also just overcoming that ACL injury. And shout out to all my trainers and staff that helped me get back to 100% as well.
Awesome, man. Well, obviously, I want to talk about that 2010 season for just a minute. For those of us like myself who grew up in Eugene, that's obviously a special year for us, and I'm sure for you guys as well. I think many Duck fans, when they think of you, including myself, just think about that iconic picture with Chip after the Civil War game, getting the big Gatorade bath. But what about that year, stands out to you thinking about it today, and how special kind of was that ride for you as a senior?
I remember that everybody was bought in. I'm not sure that we can say, or I can say, that everybody said we're going to go undefeated this year and play in our first national championship. But I knew that there was a level of accountability through that summertime, where you can really see the people that show up to conditioning, to the weight room, who has a conditioning test at the end of the summer. But I think we knew we weren't the most talented, but I think we knew we were a really, really good team. The year before, we go back to the Rose Bowl for the first time since 95, 96. And, that takes a lot to do. It takes a little bit of luck. It takes some circumstance, but it also takes some talent. And so I think once we saw that, and once we got through the first couple games of the year, and then we played, go down there and we play Tennessee. It was supposed to be a big, bad SEC team, and we beat them handedly. And we go and we play, Stanford that year on college game days there, and we beat them by 20-something points. I think that's when the dominoes started aligning, and everybody looks around and they're like, I think we got a chance to do something special. But Coach Kelly did a great job. He's a great motivator, and he was more so just, hey, let's focus on winning the day. Let's win this practice on Monday. Let's win this practice on Tuesday. Let's win this practice on Wednesday. Doing all of that, and if we put all these good days together, then we're going to go out there on Saturday and we're going to be able to go win that and then start over again when we get to the beginning of the week. But honestly, it was a bunch of selfless people. You can look on the film and you can watch the old highlights and you can see how much fun we had, the people racing to the end zone when people are scoring. And sometimes you just don't get that. Sometimes you have players that just care about them getting 100 yards and 10 catches or 100 rushing yards and a couple touchdowns. And honestly, I can say that we were really deep depth-wise, but it was also a culture that we built where it was like, we don't care who gets the credit, when we're doing this work, as long as somebody gets it. And I think that's what helped propel us through that year. And so as I think about 2010, I just wanted to, like I said, ride off into the sunset, feeling good about my college career and everything I accomplished, and just knowing that we were able to go to back-to-back Pac-10 championships and play in our first national championship, and almost take care of business and bring it back to Eugene. But I'm really proud of that group, because you look at it top to bottom, I don't think there were any 5-stars on the team. These are guys that I came in with my first year, my freshman year, and I look around and a lot of them were still there. That's 4 years of hard work and dedication.
I'm curious your thoughts on this, because I think there's a lot of parallels between last year's season and your 2010 season, just in terms of a special season, undefeated, and then obviously a bittersweet ending that was kind of abrupt and sudden in that way. How do you think through that? I think a lot of Duck fans are still thinking through last season and like, wow, that was amazing, 13-0 Big Ten championship, beat all these teams, but thud, it's done, it's over now. How do you think through both those seasons, your season, and just like parse that kind of mentally?
I think they're very similar, and I feel for last year's team more. And I said this, I was doing a podcast called Flock Talk, and I was doing that all year, so I was really tuned into a lot of the games last year. And one of the things I said is, I was like, it's possible that Oregon has to play Ohio State 3 times this year. And a lot of people really didn't understand what I said when I meant that. And I was like, okay, we play them at home. We can possibly play them in the Big Ten championship, and then we can possibly meet them again during the playoff. And, Duck fans, we were a little bit delusional at that time. We're like, no, it's not going to happen. I was like, okay. But one thing I know about football and playing football, it's very hard to beat the same team twice. Everything that worked for you in that first game, they're going to make adjustments on it. And unless you make adjustments for what you did well, which is pretty hard to do because it worked. So it's kind of a cat and mouse game. But I would honestly say that I take the blame for the loss. And I say that because I've only gone to a handful of games since I've graduated from Oregon. And the last 2 games that I've been to are Ohio State in 2015 for the national championship, and Ohio State for the Rose Bowl this past January. So with that being said, I think I'm going to take myself out of the equation from coming to games to help the Ducks out so they can continue to win and take away the bad luck that I bring. But I'm really proud of that team, and it's hard to go through a whole year with no blemishes. They were able to do that up until the playoff. Not sure how much the layoff contributed to that. And like I said, Ohio State got hot after they lost to Michigan and the whole flag on the field incident. And that's what college football and that's what sports is. It's about getting hot at the right time. It's about being able to ride that heater as long as you can. And they're a really good team also, with Chip Kelly calling the plays for them, with, Jeremiah Smith, who's a first round or first pick out of the draft whenever he comes. So it's just one of those things. You take care of what you can take care of. The dominoes are going to fall where they do. But I'm just super proud of that team for going to a new conference, from doing great and only having their first loss in the conference up until last week and with Indiana. So that is pretty high praise, and that's a pretty high standard to continue to keep. And they've done a really good job at that so far.
Before we get to some quick hitters, I just want to give you a chance to kind of talk about what you're up to today, which is something I really value and appreciate as a teacher myself. So I know you're doing some different stuff in coaching and mentorship and different things. So I think it'd be cool for Oregon fans to hear a little about your work today.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. I have been a coach, or just a certified coach, for the last couple of years, helping teenagers, young adults, parents, how to better collaborate and work with their children, to be better parents, to be better sons, to be better daughters, things of that nature. But I'm currently pivoting my business over, doing more keynote speaking and public speaking. So if you're out there looking for a public speaker from a guy who played in the NFL and was a former Duck, please reach out and find my information. But outside of that, I've always had great mentors in my life. I've always had great men pointing me in the right direction. And it's just something that I gravitate towards. I've had great people to show me the way, to be there for me when I tore my ACL, when I got cut twice from my NFL team, when I was transitioning out of football. And there needs to be a lot more men out here helping and giving a helping hand and giving some guidance from their experience of what they've been through. So that's what I enjoy doing. I would do that. Well, I don't get paid for mentoring. I would do that even if I get paid $0 to do it. But it's something that when you look at your life, you just try to say, what more can I do to help some people out there that need the help? So anybody that's out there, you have some extra time, you got some more resources, anything like that, try to figure out how you can pour back into your community, pour into young men and women around you. They will surely appreciate it down the road.
That's awesome, man. Well, we'll make sure to connect after this and put your link and info in the bio for people out there listening. I think that's a super awesome message and just cool work you're doing. So if any fans out there are looking for any of that, definitely reach out to DJ. Before we go here, I want to touch on some quick hitters real fast, which are some of our fans' favorite questions just around the team and your experience and stuff like that. So obviously Oregon, known as kind of uniform central. What was your favorite uniform you wore as a Duck?
Ooh, I got two favorite uniforms. One of them, and I don't know how they started calling them this, but the Stormtrooper all white. We usually wore that, I think, senior year when we went down and played USC. One of my favorite combinations is white head to toe. And then also, how can you not love the throwbacks? You know, just having that old Disney insignia on there, the old duck, the old logo and emblem. Got to be my favorite. The apple green and the yellow, it just sets it off so right.
I love both of those. What is the most hyped locker room you can ever remember post-game?
Oh, it had to be. Oh, that's tough. I would definitely have to say, had to be Oregon State. You know, we're in Oregon State's locker room. We won. We know we're most likely going to the national championship. It's a small locker room, so if you see some of the video on there, it's as small as it looks. But just turning that into a party was something that was very, very memorable.
Who was the best, as a wide receiver, who was the best DB you ever went against?
And this is just in life period or in the Pac-10?
Hey, whatever you want.
Yeah, I would probably say it's Darrelle Revis. So when I got to the NFL, he was with Tampa Bay, and it was easy to him, and he made me look like I didn't know what I was doing out there.
That's funny. That was the same answer Will had. He said that he was playing in a practice. He was like a preseason game, his first game, and he lines up, and there's Darrelle Revis standing across the room.
Making us look like chumps.
Obviously, Autzen is the loudest, but what was the loudest stadium you've played in beyond Autzen?
I would have to say loudest stadium would have to be, and I hate to say this, but it had to be Washington. They know how to, it's a rivalry game. They know how to get up for it. They had pretty good teams around that time. I think Sark was there around that time for senior year. And so, yeah.
I have to say that 2007 game at Washington was one of the most fun games I can ever remember being at. Just running the ball down their throat, wearing the white stormtroopers. I still talk. We get Jeff Schwartz on the pod often, and he just adores that game as well.
That's a lineman's dream right there.
Yeah. All right, two more real quick. Is there a coach or teammate who had a lasting impact on your life beyond football?
Oh, lasting coach or impact. I would say if it's a coach, I would have to say Coach Don Pelham. Just seeing him dressed up to the nines every game, and even outside of that, that's how we dressed when he was in the building. Just always carried himself really, really well. And as a young black man, seeing another black man like that, it gave me something to shoot towards and shoot for. As far as a teammate, man, I would have to say just David Paulson was just a great dude. Very quiet, very unassuming, and he gets out there and he'll catch on you with one hand or for 150 yards. And so P Money is what I call him. He's one of my favorite teammates, and he's just an awesome dude and an awesome dad right now.
Sweet. All right, last one. Which game or specific play still plays in your head like it was yesterday?
Has to be that Stanford game for when they were there for College Game Day. I remember we were watching TV and Trevor Maddich or something was telling us how that Stanford was going to bloody us up and they were going to overpower us and run through us and all this other stuff. And they did that, for the first quarter and had me a little shook. But for us to pretty much shut them out in the second half and to beat them by 20 and for LaMichael to have 200 yards, Autzen was jumping, probably the loudest I've ever heard it since I was there. That plays in my head nonstop.
That was a fun game. Well, hey, man, we're so grateful for you for coming on. For Duck fans who want to check out your work, which you plugged earlier and are interested in any of that, where can they find what you're doing these days?
Awesome. Well, I got a podcast that you guys can catch me on. It's called Too Good to Be Drew, TOO. I talk about a lot of life stuff there, give a lot of advice for interviewing, for transitioning for athletes. And then also you can just go to my website, www.drewjaydavis.com, and you can submit anything on there with the contact form if you're looking for me as a speaker. And you can also find me on Instagram, Drew J. Davis as well. So I look forward to hearing from you guys and dropping by and just giving some support.
Awesome, man. Well, always fun to hear from former Ducks, especially ones who are, making an impact in their community these days. So grateful to you, and thanks for all the listeners out there for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Rising podcast. We will see you next week.